My roommate's boyfriend accused me of stealing his dessert, and what happened next exposed a scheme that made my blood boil. Trevor stormed into our kitchen at 9 p.m., pointing at the empty container on the counter. "Did you eat my tiramisu?" he demanded, his face red with anger. I looked up from my laptop where I'd been studying. "Yeah, I had some. It was in the communal fridge area." His expression shifted from anger to something that looked almost like panic. "No, no, no," he muttered, pulling out his phone with shaking hands. "This ruins everything." My roommate Jessica appeared in the doorway, still in her work scrubs from her nursing shift. "What's wrong? Why are you shouting?" "My name is Riley, and I'm a 23-year-old graduate student sharing a 2-bedroom apartment with Jessica, who's been my best friend since freshman year of college. We'd always had a simple system for the fridge. Top shelf was Jessica's, middle shelf was mine, bottom shelf was communal for leftovers or shared groceries. That tiramisu had been sitting on the communal shelf for 3 days with no label or note, so I figured it was fair game. I'd actually asked Jessica about it yesterday, and she'd shrugged, saying she didn't know where it came from. If it's been there that long without a name on it, someone probably forgot about it. But Trevor's reaction was way too intense for someone who'd just lost a dessert. He was frantically scrolling through his phone, muttering something about timing and schedules. Jessica walked over to him, concerned. "Trevor, what's going on?" "It's just tiramisu. We can get more from the Italian place downtown." "It's not just tiramisu," Trevor snapped, then caught himself and lowered his voice. "I mean, it was special tiramisu. I had it made specifically for tonight." Jessica's eyebrows went up. "Made specifically? What do you mean?" That's when I noticed Trevor looking at me with this weird calculating expression, like he was trying to figure out how much I knew. "I was going to surprise you," he told Jessica, but his tone didn't match his words. "It was supposed to be romantic." Something felt off. Trevor had been dating Jessica for 8 months, and I'd never seen him do anything particularly romantic or thoughtful. He was the type who forgot her birthday and showed up empty-handed to date nights. The idea of him commissioning a special dessert seemed completely out of character. "What kind of surprise?" Jessica asked, and I could hear the skepticism in her voice too. She knew Trevor as well as I did. Trevor ran his hands through his hair, clearly stalling. "Well, it doesn't matter now, does it? Thanks to your roommate." I stood up from the kitchen table, my studying forgotten. "Hey, don't blame me for eating unmarked food from the communal shelf. That's literally how we've done things for 3 years." Jessica nodded in agreement. "Riley's right. You know our system, Trevor. If you wanted to save something, you should have put it on your shelf with a note." But Trevor wasn't listening. He was typing something on his phone with urgent, jerky movements. A few minutes later, his phone rang, and he answered it immediately. "Yeah, she ate it." "No, the whole thing." "I don't know, maybe 2 hours ago." "Yeah, we need to do something." Jessica and I exchanged glances. Who was he talking to, and why did it matter so much when I'd eaten a dessert? "Trevor," Jessica said firmly, "you're acting really weird. What's going on?" Trevor finished his call and looked at both of us with an expression I couldn't read. "We need to go to the hospital," he announced. Jessica laughed. "What? Why would we need to go to the hospital over tiramisu?" "Because," Trevor said, his voice tight with what sounded like barely controlled panic, "there was something in that tiramisu that wasn't supposed to be eaten by anyone except Jessica." My stomach lurched, suddenly remembering the slight metallic taste I'd noticed in the last few bites. I'd assumed it was just the coffee flavor being stronger than expected. "What kind of something?" I asked, though I was starting to have a terrible suspicion. Trevor looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "A ring," he mumbled. "I hid an engagement ring in the tiramisu." The kitchen went silent except for the hum of our ancient refrigerator. Jessica's mouth fell open. I felt my stomach drop as I realized what this meant. "You hid a ring in dessert and put it on the communal shelf?" I asked incredulously. "It was supposed to be a surprise." Trevor protested. "I was going to bring it out during dinner tonight and propose. But then I got called into work for an emergency, and I had to leave it here. I thought it would be safe in the fridge." Jessica was staring at him like she'd never seen him before. "You hid an engagement ring in food and didn't tell me not to let anyone eat it? What if I'd eaten it myself before you got home?" Trevor's panic was becoming more obvious by the minute. "I was only gone for 4 hours. I didn't think anyone would eat it so fast. And I texted you not to eat anything from the fridge until I got back." I pulled out my phone to check Jessica's messages, and sure enough, there was a text from Trevor from about an hour ago. Don't eat anything from fridge until I get home. Surprise planned. But Jessica had been at work and hadn't seen it. Trevor, Jessica said slowly, this is the most ridiculous proposal plan I've ever heard. Who hides a ring in food without telling anyone? But I was more focused on the practical problem. How big was this ring? I asked, prodding my stomach gingerly. I wasn't feeling any sharp pains, but the thought of metal jewelry traveling through my digestive system was terrifying. Trevor pulled up a photo on his phone showing a pretty standard engagement ring with what looked like a decent-sized diamond. It's about this big, he said, holding up his thumb and forefinger to show the dimensions. My grandmother's ring. My stomach cramped suddenly, whether from anxiety or the ring, I couldn't tell. Jessica grabbed her keys from the counter. We're going to the ER, she announced. This is insane, but we need to make sure Riley's okay. The drive to the hospital was awkward and tense. Trevor kept apologizing and explaining how he'd thought hiding the ring would be creative and memorable. Jessica alternated between concern for me and obvious annoyance with her boyfriend's spectacularly poor planning. I can't believe you put the ring on the communal shelf, she kept saying. You know how we organize our fridge. You've been here dozens of times. At the emergency room, the triage nurse looked skeptical when we explained the situation. You swallowed an engagement ring that was hidden in tiramisu, she repeated, as if making sure she'd heard correctly. The nurse led us to a room where we waited for what felt like hours. Trevor paced nervously while Jessica sat beside my bed, holding my hand. I'm so sorry, she kept saying. This is completely my fault for dating an idiot. When the doctor finally arrived, she ordered X-rays to locate the ring and determine if surgery would be necessary. We'll need to monitor its progress through your system, she explained. Depending on the size and shape, it might pass naturally, or we might need to intervene. The X-ray revealed the ring clearly visible in my stomach. The doctor showed us the image on her tablet, pointing to the unmistakable outline of metal and stone. Good news is it's not stuck anywhere dangerous, she said. Bad news is you'll need to take some medication to help it move through your system more quickly. Trevor's phone had been buzzing constantly since we arrived at the hospital. Finally, Jessica grabbed it from his hands to see who was calling so urgently. Her expression changed completely when she saw the screen. Trevor, she said in a voice I'd never heard before, why is Marcus calling you 15 times? And why do you have 17 missed calls from someone named Diane? Trevor tried to grab his phone back, but Jessica held it away from him. And what's this text from Marcus that says, did she buy the story about the ring? My stomach dropped, and not from the jewelry lodged in it. What story about the ring? I asked. Trevor looked like a cornered animal. It's not what you think, he started, but Jessica was already scrolling through his text messages. Her face was getting redder by the second. Oh my God, she breathed, reading from the phone. Marcus is asking if the mark fell for it and whether you think she'll pay for the medical bills. She looked up at Trevor with pure fury. I'm the mark? This is a scam. Trevor tried to speak, but Jessica wasn't finished. She kept reading. Here's one from Diane saying the insurance might not cover the procedure and asking if you think the rich girl will pay out of pocket. She looked at me. Riley, he's been telling people you're rich. My mind was racing as the pieces fell into place. There was never a proposal plan, was there? I asked Trevor. You were trying to scam money out of me for fake medical bills. Trevor's silence was answer enough. Jessica stood up from her chair, still holding his phone. And what's this about splitting the insurance payout 3 ways? Trevor, were you planning to commit insurance fraud too? The doctor returned at that moment with discharge instructions and a bottle of medication. Take these to help speed up the process, she explained, handing me the laxatives. And strain everything for the next few days until you recover the ring. Trevor perked up at the mention of recovering the ring. When she gets it back, I'll need to take it for cleaning and inspection, he said quickly. Family heirloom and all. But Jessica was still reading through his messages. Trevor, this text from Marcus says, make sure you get the real ring back, not the fake one we planted. What fake ring? Trevor went completely white. The doctor looked confused by the sudden tension in the room. Is there some kind of issue with multiple rings? She asked. I felt sick, and not just from the medication. You put a fake ring in the tiramisu, I realized out loud. You were planning to get it back and claim I damaged or lost the real one, weren't you? Jessica was scrolling faster through the messages. Here's the whole plan, she said, her voice shaking with anger. Step 1. Plant fake ring in food. Step 2. Get Riley to eat it. Step 3. Claim expensive medical bills and lost family heirloom. Step 4. Split the insurance money 3 ways with Marcus and Diane. Trevor finally found his voice. Jessica, you don't understand. I'm in debt. Real debt. I owe people money, and they're not the kind of people who accept payment plans. So you decided to scam my best friend? Jessica shouted. Several nurses looked in our direction. You made me an accessory to fraud against someone I care about? The doctor cleared her throat. I'm going to step out and let you folks sort this out, she said diplomatically. But Ms. Riley, please make sure to follow the medication instructions regardless of whatever this is. After the doctor left, Trevor tried to explain himself. It wasn't supposed to hurt anyone. Riley's family has money, and I figured she could afford a few thousand in medical bills. It's not like she'd miss it. I stood up from the hospital bed, feeling anger override my nausea. My family doesn't have money, you idiot. I'm on financial aid and work 2 part-time jobs to afford rent. Where did you get the idea that I'm rich? Trevor looked confused. But you always have nice clothes and you never seem worried about money. I shop at thrift stores and I budget carefully, I snapped. Just because I don't complain about being broke doesn't mean I have a trust fund. Jessica was still discovering more evidence on Trevor's phone. Riley, look at this. He's been taking photos of our apartment and your belongings to show Marcus and Diane. They've been planning this for weeks. She showed me pictures Trevor had taken of my laptop, my textbooks, even my winter coat. Apparently, my second-hand MacBook and thrift store wardrobe had been enough to convince them I was secretly wealthy. And here's a text from Marcus saying they should target you because college girls from the suburbs always have daddy's credit card to fall back on, Jessica continued reading. Trevor, this is disgusting. I was processing the full scope of their plan when another realization hit me. The tiramisu wasn't even homemade, was it? You bought it from the grocery store and planted the ring yourself. Trevor's defeat was obvious. Yeah, it was from Kroger. Cost me $12. Jessica threw his phone back at him in disgust. $12 to commit fraud and potentially hurt my best friend. You're not just an idiot, Trevor. You're a criminal. The medication the doctor had given me was already starting to work, sending sharp cramps through my abdomen. I need to get home, I told Jessica. And I need to call my parents about this. Call your parents? Trevor looked panicked again. Why would you need to call your parents? Because I'm going to need a lawyer, I replied. My dad might not have money, but he works for a law firm, and he's going to know exactly what to do about this. Trevor tried to backtrack one more time. Look, maybe we can work something out. I'll call off Marcus and Diane, and we'll just forget this ever happened. Jessica laughed, but there was no humor in it. Trevor, you committed felony fraud, conspiracy, and probably a dozen other crimes. You made me an unknowing accomplice, and you tried to scam my best friend. There's no working this out. The ride home was quiet except for Trevor's occasional attempts to justify his actions. Jessica ignored him completely, focusing on helping me through the medication side effects. When we got back to the apartment, she immediately started packing Trevor's belongings from her room. You have until tomorrow morning to get your stuff and give me back your key, she told him. And if you or your friends contact Riley or me again, we're calling the police immediately. After Trevor left, Jessica helped me get settled with the medication regimen the doctor had prescribed. I am so sorry, she kept saying. I had no idea he was capable of something like this. I spent the next 2 days following the hospital's instructions, and thankfully, the fake ring passed without complications. When I finally recovered it, I could tell immediately that it wasn't valuable, just a cheap costume jewelry ring with a fake stone. Jessica took photos of the ring and printed out all the text messages she'd screenshotted from Trevor's phone. Evidence, she explained when I asked why she was being so thorough. My dad called his friend who specialized in fraud cases, and within a week, we had filed a police report. The detective who took our statement said cases like this were becoming more common, with scammers targeting college students they perceived as wealthy. The good news is your roommate documented everything for us, the detective told me, looking through Jessica's evidence folder. We rarely get fraud cases with this much clear evidence of premeditation and conspiracy. Trevor, Marcus, and Diane were all arrested 2 weeks later. The charges included conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted insurance fraud, and what the prosecutor called elaborate deception with intent to cause financial harm. During the investigation, we learned that this wasn't their first scheme. They'd tried similar scams on 3 other college students over the past year, though none of those had involved anyone actually swallowing fake jewelry. The prosecutor offered me victim's compensation for my medical bills and the trauma of the experience. The total wasn't huge, about $2,000, but it covered my ER visit and gave me some extra money for the stress Trevor's scam had caused. Jessica and I testified at Trevor's trial 6 months later. The judge was particularly harsh during sentencing, noting that the scheme showed a callous disregard for the victim's health and safety in pursuit of financial gain. Trevor received 2 years in prison, while Marcus and Diane got 18 months each. The judge also ordered them to pay restitution and banned them from contact with me or Jessica during their probation periods. I hope this experience teaches you that there are no shortcuts to solving your problems, the judge told Trevor during sentencing, and that your actions have real consequences for real people. The most surprising part of the whole ordeal was how it strengthened my friendship with Jessica. She felt terrible about bringing Trevor into our lives and was determined to make it up to me, even though I kept telling her she wasn't responsible for his actions. I should have seen the signs, she insisted one evening as we were repainting our kitchen to cleanse the space of Trevor's negative energy, as she put it. He was always asking weird questions about your family and your finances. Looking back, I realized there had been red flags I'd missed too. Trevor's sudden interest in my class schedule, his questions about my parents' jobs, his curiosity about my laptop and textbooks. I'd thought he was just making conversation, but he'd actually been gathering information for his scam. The experience taught me to be more careful about who I trust with personal information. It also made me more aware of how scammers operate, targeting people based on assumptions rather than facts. 6 months after the trial, Jessica started dating someone new, a fellow nurse from her hospital who she met during their break room orientation about avoiding workplace scams. The irony isn't lost on me, she joked when she told me about him. We kept the fake ring as a reminder of the whole crazy experience. Jessica turned it into a keychain charm with a label that says, "Trust but verify," which makes us laugh every time we see it. The story became something of a legend in our apartment building. Our neighbors still ask me about the time you accidentally ate an engagement ring at parties, though most of them don't know about the fraud aspect. It's like a modern-day urban legend, our downstairs neighbor told me recently. The girl who ate the fake ring and caught the scammers. I graduated that spring with my master's degree and found a job at a non-profit that helps fraud victims navigate the legal system. My experience with Trevor's scam turned out to be unexpectedly good preparation for understanding how these schemes affect people emotionally and financially. Jessica finished her nursing degree and now works in emergency medicine. She jokes that she's an expert at spotting suspicious injuries and stories after living through Trevor's elaborate deception. We still live together, though we've upgraded to a larger apartment with our own separate fridges to avoid any future food-related drama. Our new system is simple. Everything belongs to whoever bought it, and we ask before taking anything. The whole experience cost Trevor his freedom, his relationship, and his reputation, all for a scheme that was never going to work anyway. The fake ring he planted was worth maybe $20, but his fraud conviction will follow him for the rest of his life. Honestly, Jessica said recently, if he'd just asked me for help with his debts, I would have tried to work something out. Instead, he chose to commit multiple felonies and traumatize my best friend. Looking back, I'm grateful the scheme fell apart so quickly. If Trevor had been smarter about his planning, if he'd used a real ring, or targeted someone who actually had money, or avoided leaving such obvious evidence, he might have gotten away with it and moved on to hurt other people. Instead, his poor execution exposed not just his own crimes, but an entire network of people targeting college students for fraud. The detective told me their arrests led to breaking up a larger operation that had been running similar scams across 3 states. The experience taught me that sometimes the most important thing you can do as a victim is to speak up and fight back, even when it's easier to just move on and forget. By pursuing the case against Trevor and his accomplices, we potentially saved other students from becoming their victims. It also showed me how quickly someone can go from being a peripheral person in your life to causing major trauma and upheaval. Trevor had always been just Jessica's boyfriend to me, someone I tolerated but didn't think much about. I never imagined he was actively planning to hurt me financially. The whole ordeal lasted almost a year from start to finish, between the initial incident, the investigation, and the trial. But in the end, justice was served, and I learned valuable lessons about trust, friendship, and standing up for yourself when someone tries to take advantage of you. Thanks for staying with me through this wild story about how a fake engagement ring hidden in grocery store tiramisu exposed a fraud scheme that could have ruined my finances. Have you ever discovered that someone you thought you could trust was actually planning to scam you? Sometimes the most elaborate crimes fall apart because of the simplest mistakes. Take care, and remember, if something seems too weird to be true, it probably is.